Coogs House, part of the reason you join the Big 12 conference is to get to play in things like the Big 12 and Big East showdown. But as the Houston Cougars head to Xavier on Friday night, is it really going to be a big challenge?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who can't stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way you get the latest on Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It is so good to see you again. Make sure you subscribe. That way you get the latest each and every day. But also, we're doing a giveaway at 1750, and we're dangerously close. Hit subscribe. Help us get there. Doing a giveaway every 250. Like, comment the video. Let us know in the contest. If after today's video you have nothing left to say, you're all talked out about Xavier, like we did with the football game against Cincinnati, tell us what you think of Skyline Chili. There is a right answer to this one. Now, I want to talk some in today's episode about all things Houston Cougar basketball heading to Xavier. We had this weird stretch where we had one football game and one basketball game basically over a 2-week span. Of course, Houston did fire Dana Holgorsen, so we got to talk a lot about all of that. But we're finally back into the part of the season. We have more basketball games, and Houston's got a hoops game tonight. So we're going to talk about previewing that one. We're going to talk some about what Xavier looks like thus far this season, who matches up with who on the starting lineup and beyond, kind of where the fits are. And the last thing, I think the Houston Cougars have a lot of advantages. So what the Coug advantages are will all be in the final segment. Obviously, for more college basketball each and every day, you can always check out Locked On College Basketball. Andy and Isaac break down hoops more broadly. But for just the Houston Cougars perspective, let's talk a little bit about their opponent Friday night, and that is Xavier. Now, I want to point out that Houston is going to Xavier as a part of the Big East Big 12 Challenge, where the part of the year where big Power 6 conferences, because there are 6 power conferences in basketball, as long as the Pac-12 is alive, all play one another. And the Big 12 matches up with the Big East. And part of the reason you join the Big 12 conference is to get to be a part of these kinds of events. Being a power conference means you get this kind of a non-conference game to help you get ready for games in the best conference in college basketball. But Xavier is a lot more of a legacy program at this point, I think, than maybe a current talent for sure. Xavier is 4-3 this season. They have losses to Purdue, Washington, and Oakland. And that is not Oakland like the Golden State Warriors. That's Oakland, University of Oakland. Now, I will say Oakland is a sneaky March Madness team, as I could see it right now after watching that game to get ready for this. I could see them being the kind of small school that like pops in the Sweet 16 at the right matchups or makes a big splash for winning a first-round game, which you're not ready for, depending on where they end up. Now, I thought it was interesting that Oakland won that game from a number of different aspects, but one, it got to be a very physical game, and Oakland out-physicaled Xavier, which you don't typically see the Group of 5 team do to the Power 5 team. And they also, at various points in this game, went to an odd front zone, a 3-2 zone, and Houston does not run a lot of zone defense, but frankly, one of the things that I kept on belaboring, and then last year it ended up working at a key moment in the NCAA tournament. Kelvin runs a 3-2 zone with this group when he needs to run a zone at all. He puts his 2 post players in the back and lets his tremendous guards put ball pressure at the front. That worked really well for Oakland. We haven't seen Houston run a lot of zone, haven't seen them need to run a lot of zone this year, so you can see them, I think, get back into that this one. The lone good win for Xavier was against St. Mary's, and unfortunately for Xavier, that good win at the time when they beat St. Mary's on a neutral floor at that by 17 points slowly faded away. It slowly looks like the kind of win that it's not less and less impressive as the year goes on. Now, with all of that said, we do know that Xavier is coached by Sean Miller, and even in his first stint at Xavier, he was a very talented coach. He is a very talented coach. He leaves Arizona a couple years ago with some baggage, to say the least, but on the whole, we know on the floor he can coach basketball. So I'm sure they'll have something in store for Houston. Now, as far as like the way they play, I thought things that were impressive for them with that they were really, really impressive with post to post passing. So like low to high, high to low kind of stuff. Once the ball gets inside of 10 or 15 feet with those two post players, they don't have like a bunch of 7-footers or anything like that, but they do play two more traditional post players, a 6'7", a 6'10" kind of guys, right? That play a lot more inside that 15-foot area. I thought they were really good from post to post passing, and they do all kinds of different ways to get it into the high, into the low, and then work that angle. What I did not think they were super good at was in their guard play, dropping the ball off to the post. So like on a drive and drop kind of thing. So they had a lot of turnovers in the couple games I pulled up to watch. From trying to force those in that way, their post entry passes kind of have to be very open, traditional ones. I think Houston, when we get to the advantages later in the episode, is going to do a pretty good job of taking those away. Right, they typically do. I think, interestingly enough, now this team is not as tall as Utah by any stretch, but Utah had so much size on Houston that I actually weirdly think Utah was a good warm up game for this one. I think Utah is better than Xavier. Frankly, I thought Dayton and Houston playing Dayton, I thought Dayton looked better than Xavier too. So maybe they'll be the best team in Ohio or something. I don't know. But on the whole, I looked at a couple other things that I thought Xavier did well. I thought they did not match the physicality of Oakland in that game, but I did think that what they did fairly well in that game was like they're very disciplined in their approach. They didn't. You see a lot of college teams when things get physical in a college game, lose their cool, lose their composure, and freak out with referees. How are you not calling this? How are you not calling that? And while I didn't think they stepped up in a physical sense, I thought they were well disciplined in that they didn't let the physicality bother them. I think they did get out physical, but I don't think that they were mentally out of it because of the physicality. I think that's important for a college basketball team. They got a couple of key players to keep an eye on. Desmond Claude is the guy for them. 16.7 points per game, 6'6" perimeter guy. Strong. He's off balance finishing stuff. He's finishing through contact. And while as a team that didn't step up to the physicality of Oakland, I did think that he probably elevated his game as the game got more physical. It was a shame his teammates could not match him. He is not a tremendous shooter of the ball from the outside. I don't see him being the kind of guy that Houston's worried about from a deep threat type of perspective. He shoots, let me double check my number here. Yeah, just 24% from three this season, but he is leading them in points again at 16.7 because of how well he finishes around the cup. And he's so big and strong, it's hard to get him, frankly, off his path once he is heading towards the basket. So we'll talk about matchups in a second, but Houston's going to have to keep an eye on him as he drives. Now, I mentioned the post-to-post pass can be a real strength of theirs. I'm going to do my best with this name, but Gaidas Nemeska is their 6'7" power forward. Really, really impressed by him. Now, he is not like a one-trick pony. He gets 10 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, like a half a block, and an assist and a half or something to that effect, right? But what he does is he does always seem to be doing the right thing on the floor for them. Even when things are falling apart as a team around them, he finds the right pass. And that post-to-post passing, his soft hands and good touch are really, really important on both ends of that. He plays the power forward spot. He started every game for them with a couple other guys playing at the center spot next to him. I've been, again, pretty impressed by just the decision making and solid play out of him. He's not the kind of guy that's athletic and going to jump out of the gym and impress you that way. He's not the kind of guy that's going to light it up from three and impress you that way. He's not the kind of guy that's going to score 27 points and impress you that way, I don't think. But he is the kind of guy that just won't make a mistake. He just won't. And Houston's got to find a way to kind of get him off of his game a little bit. I think that they will, and I'll get to more of that in a second. But first, if you're talking about getting off of your game, or if you're feeling a little off your game, or if you need to add some ways to win this weekend and step things up and get back on track, Let's talk about doing it at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because at FanDuel right now, they got a cool promotion where new customers get $150 back in bonus bets by winning any $5 moneyline bet. That means you can put down just $5 on a moneyline, and if your team wins, you get $150. That's simple, that easy. Now, if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. They got all kinds of fun spreads and player props and over-unders as well. But the money line I'm looking at right now is our Houston Texans are hosting the Denver Broncos on Sunday. They got Houston at -174. They also, for what it's worth, have Houston as a 3.5-point favorite over and set at 47.5. I'm taking Houston across the board on all that. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think that, turnovers are random, and I feel like Denver's relied on a lot of those this season. We know that Houston can take care of the ball. I'm thinking on Houston across the board on that. I'm thinking about you should do it, thinking that you should do it at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Kick off the NFL season this year. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so I still want to talk some about matchups in this one because I think it's interesting because Houston in a lot of the Big 12, Big East matchups would have been undersized. They would have had problems where they're playing a couple 6'10s and they only start 1 6'9 themselves, or they're playing a bunch of 6'5 guards and Houston plays a couple at any one given time. They'll have 2 or 3 guards under 6'2 on the team on the floor, right? Like I think across the board, Houston could have had problems with various teams in these crossover matchups with the Big East, just from a size perspective. And then we'd have seen what Kelvin Sampson does to overcome those. Xavier's interestingly not that from a physical perspective. So let's go down the list. Starting point guard for them, I think, will be Davian McKnight. I'm sorry, spell check did that for me. It's Davian McKnight. Now, this kid is a 6'1", 190, strong, very similar build, frankly, to a Jamal Shead kind of kid. He originally went to Western Kentucky, but has been at Xavier this year. At Western Kentucky, he did a lot of let me double check the scoring. He was a 16.5 points per game guy for them. It was everything across the board in Conference USA at Western Kentucky. At Xavier, he's been a lot more of your traditional point guard, a lot more of distributing the basketball. He's got over 5 assists per game. He kind of orchestrates the offense and makes sure everyone's on the right track, in the right spots at the right time. He runs a fairly, I want to say, slow pace relative to the rest of college basketball per KenPom. But for what it's worth, Houston's played slower. So it might feel not as slow because Houston's just by happenstance in the Charleston Classic and things like that plays some slower playing teams. But he controls the pace and makes sure things are going in Xavier's favor. But he's a matchup with Jamal Shead. I think it's kind of thing where Jamal Shead is similar type player, but better, right? Like they do the same things. I think Jamal Shead probably scores the ball a little bit better as well. But then Jamal Shead is a little bit faster, a little bit better dictating the pace, and a little bit better at picking a spots to speed up the tempo, a little bit better. Like I just think he's better at each of those things. Quincy Lavari will be their shooting guard. Quincy Lavari is a 6'2 junior. He also transferred in from Rice. If that's a familiar name, it's because he's from Rice. He'll be the shooting guard starting alongside David McKnight. I think that's an LJ Cryer matchup. Now, I will say Cryer is not the defender that Jamal Shead is. And honestly, Olivari is a little bit better shooter than McKnight is. So I could see if you're Sampson, do you maybe flip-flop that and give Cryer the easier defensive matchup from a scorer perspective or whatever, and let him spend more of his energy on offense because he's a great shooter for us. Maybe. I would imagine I start, though, with Cryer on Olivari. As far as how he gets his points, he is a shooter as well. He looks a lot like LJ Cryer for them. Again, I think Cryer's better, but for them, he's shooting 37.5% from 3 this season on almost 6 attempts, which is a lot for a college kid. So look for him running off screens. Look for him. He's not doing it off the bounce like Sasser did for us a year ago, but you will see him doing all kinds of work running around without the ball to ultimately pop out and shoot the ball, like in a catch and shoot type of situation. I mentioned Desmond Claude as their small forward. If Houston starts Damian Dunn, I think that's a great matchup here because Damian does not give up a lot of size. Claude is 6'5", 205. Some places have him at 6'6", so we'll call him 6'5.5". He's a stockier build, though, big and strong. He uses that strength as advantage on the drives. He's the most impressive offensive player in a one-on-one sense on that roster. It's not that Damian Dunn is the best defender on Houston's roster. That's really, I think, mostly because Houston's got so many good defenders. It's not shots at Damian necessarily. But as far as a perimeter guy that has the strength to keep up with Claude and keep him out of the paint, I think you've got to go with Dunn here. I could also see if they start Emmanuel Sharp, obviously Sharp covering him because Sharp's got a little bit more weight to him as well as compared to other guards. So look for either one of those guys starting at the 3 spot to get Desmond Claude here. He is interesting in his scoring, as I mentioned in the first segment. Finishes a lot around the rim, so you got to keep him out of the paint. So I think that's where that strength will come into effect. Gaius Nemeskia. Anyway, Gaius. He is, again, their most impressive player to me because he just doesn't make very many mistakes when he plays. He's a mistake-free basketball player. He's a traditional high post, 15 to 18 feet, comfortable putting on the ground for a couple dribbles, but not putting on the ground for more than that. Good passer, good finisher. Just 10 points per game, just 5 rebounds per game, just 1.5 assists per game. Nothing crazy, just does the right thing a lot. Because of that, I think you got to put Juwan Roberts on him. And I say that even when Juwan is technically the 5, like with JoJo Tugler at the 4, Terrence Arsenault at the 4, something like that. I think unless you absolutely have to from a size perspective, move him off. I think J1 has to cover Gaius because, frankly, Juwan is kind of our guy that does a lot of the same things defensively. He's always in the right help side spot. He's always rotating over at the right time. He's always picking his spots to come over and make the sports center play at the right kind of moments. And he's always picking the right time to make the safe play at the right kind of moments. And I think that having our high IQ forward on their high IQ forward is a way to kind of, I don't know, neutralize, to say, the strength that he is in a mistake-free basketball player. And frankly, can J1 bait him into one of his first mistakes of the season? He's really, really talented. But I think Juwan Roberts can kind of keep him to a negligible impact on the game. They started 2 different centers this season. I have not seen reporting as to what the thought there was, but Abu Usman is a, what is he listed here at, 6'10", 250, and Sasa Siani is a 6'9", 240, right? Both traditional big centers. Frankly, both just finishing at the rim, not doing a whole lot of other things. Because they camp out near the rim so much, I imagine this makes it a very easy game for Xavier Francis to play a lot because he can cover that post up by the rim. He can also take a quick one gallop shuffle and cover the other side of the rim on a driver. The length of Xavier will help him match up for what he lacks in size and weight. I don't think Xavier is quite to 250 these days or anything like that. But the length at the rim is going to be really, really important. Both Usman and Siani are the kind of guys that get a lot of, for lack of a better phrasing, garbage buckets, right? They're at the rim at the right time when they're receiving end of assists, when they're receiving end of putbacks. They're just, again, garbage bucket type guys. And frankly, what that means is that as they're not the focal point of the offense, but they are an involved part of the offense, that it keeps Xavier by the rim and helps on defense, but it doesn't necessarily put him in a spot on the perimeter or something where he can't hang. I think it's a really good matchup for him. I think we'll see a lot more minutes out of him than we saw in some of the other games in Charleston. As far as the bench goes, I think you'll see a lot of Arsenault, a lot of JoJo Tugler. If they start Damian Dunn, a lot of Sharp. If they start Sharp, a lot of Damian Dunn, and vice versa, right? Whichever of the Usman or Siani doesn't start at center for Xavier, you're going to see the other one. They'll see Trey Green, a freshman backup point guard. He's listed at 6 foot. He might be 5'11". He is a little faster than Davion McKnight, but he scores the ball even less. He's able to turn the ball. He is known to turn the ball over, and as you look at their games across the board, he's averaging 2 turnovers per game on very limited minutes. And again, freshman point guard, it happens. I imagine you see him in the game, you see a little bit more amped up ball pressure that can get the ball out of his hands and hopefully force a few more of those turnovers. The other guy you see come off the bench for Xavier is Dalen Swain. He's another 6'7" perimeter guy, but he's another 6'7" perimeter guy that is better around the rim, and so you'll see him driving a lot. He's going to try and drive and dish, but he's really going to be better off when he tries to drive and score. Again, unless they had him and Desmond Claude in the game at the same time, they didn't do that a whole lot in games I saw. I imagine what you're going to see is Damian Dunn or Emmanuel Sharp on those guys. I could see Houston going to a super small lineup with JoJo Arsenault, Dunn, maybe Malik Wilson, and Sharp or Shead or Cryer at the point. With that, if that's the case, what I imagine you'll see is full court pressure to try and get the ball turned over before they can get to their advantages inside. What I really bet you see happening, though, is because of how much they play through the 4 and the 5 and at the rim in this offense, you'll see a lot of ball pressure inside what you'd call in a high school gym, the volleyball line, right? Where you're trying to force them into turnovers and those kinds of things. Now, I said in the third segment, I want to talk some about the advantages, and I'm already kind of into that. But the advantage I see here is that Houston and that ball pressure is going to be so vital. Xavier has 10 turnovers per game on just 67 possessions. Okay, that means 1 out of every 7 plays, they're getting a turnover, and they've played some really low-end competition along the way to get to those numbers, right? Now, I don't mean to like denigrate other programs, but like they played Bryant, they played Jacksonville, played Robert Morris, and Robert Morris, I think, is a team that can be sneaky at times, but it's not looking like their best roster by any stretch. And they still turn the ball over fairly often for a team that plays so few possessions per game. I imagine Houston's ball pressure and trapping and rotations, the monster kind of stuff we see on the post, all of that will, I think, force that number to be much higher. Even if they only play 67, 68 possessions in this game, I think you're going to see at least double-digit turnovers. I think you'll see more like 15. Again, Houston is going to be able to turn these guys over a lot. The speed, I know Houston doesn't quite have the same speed, same size inside, in that Xavier is 6'9", and he's the only real. I mean, Tugler's listed at 6'8", 6'7", some places, like, and those are the only real like big guys they've got. Whereas they've got a couple 6'10s at Xavier, but the speed and length with which Houston is aggressively playing defense down low will make up for a lot of that. You'll see that same intensity and high motor type play translate, I should say, into a bunch of rebounds in this one as well. I think this is the kind of game where Houston will start slow because they always seem to start slow. And then they'll get a timeout where Sampson chews them out a little bit and they'll pick it up and go from there. I think this is the kind of game where you're going to see fairly even scoring throughout. You might get a Cryer 20 ball because he is that kind of a shooter. And if he's got a hot night, you got to feed the hot hand. I think some shooter will, I should back up. I think some shooter will have a 20-point night, whether it's Cryer, Sharp, Dunn, whomever. I think after that, it'd be fairly even balanced scoring across the board. Nothing too crazy. I think Houston get a lot of stuff they want out of some basic sets and things like that. Basic high screen and roll with the 5, maybe a short roll to J1, and J1 can dish it from there. I'd love to see Terrence Arsenault at the small ball 4 do some pick and short roll and they get to distribute out of there. I think that's ultimately the kind of thing he's going to be really, really good at for this team down the line. I don't know if he'll get to do it in this game because of the 6'7s and 6'10s. I bet he's playing more of the true 3 than the small ball 4. But I digress. We'll see how that plays out. Now, I will be watching this game before I come online to talk about it. However, as you all know, I do coach high school basketball. We are playing Friday night at roughly, I think we tip off about an hour after this one tips off, which means I'll be in pregame at the start, which means I'll end up doing the deal where I get home late and probably say I'm going to watch the first half and I'm watching the entire game sometime around midnight. As far as when the recap show will be. We're still trying to toying with the idea of when to do Cougars After Dark during basketball season, because basketball games are all kinds of different days. But Saturday was kind of a nice, like, everyone gets together on a Saturday and talk about things on the live show for Houston football, because football games are every Saturday. So we're still toying with the idea if you got ideas yourself, put in the comments down below. Sometimes weeknights can get kind of late for people, especially when you're a school teacher like me, and those kind of things. The other hiccup with this particular Saturday, as you all know, I said a couple episodes back, Coach Yvonne Adams, mother of KJ Adams at Kansas, passed away from her second bout with cancer right before Thanksgiving. She was a really important person in my life. We're really close, and I'm going to be going back to Austin for the funeral on Saturday. Just a day trip back to Austin for the funeral. And so, as far as recording anything this Saturday and going live on the Saturday, I know I'm getting up super early, getting in the car, driving to Austin, and then after an emotional afternoon, I don't know what the rest of the day will look like. So I hesitate to commit to a live show Saturday night, but I'm open to doing Cougars After Dark because, frankly, we all could use some talking about nice, light things like Houston Cougar basketball at some point this weekend. Open ideas as far as when to get those scheduled during basketball season. So, while this weekend looks hard, tell me in the comments down below what you think would be a good schedule for that. Thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Coogs today. Be on the lookout for a bonus episode about potential coaching news at some point this weekend. Again, on the lookout for bonus episode, potential coaching news, whenever that drops. We're looking to get out as soon as we can once that news hits. So make sure you like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all the wonderful things out with the podcast where you find us. Oh, side note, if you made it this far, if you are a Spotify person, your Spotify Wrapped had Locked On Coogs, one of your top whatever podcasts, find me on social media and let me know. I'm sending out stickers to people to let me know. I'm up to like 6 or 7 people right now where Locked On Coogs in their top couple of podcasts. So sending out stickers to all people that are everydayers here at Locked On Coogs. So make sure you subscribe, join the Everydayer Club, and maybe next year Spotify Wrapped we'll be giving away something bigger than stickers. Who knows? Locked On Coogs, a private Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Coogs, every day. Go Coogs.